Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever loved someone so deeply, only to feel like they erased every ounce of that love with a single word, a single action, or even their silence? Have you ever been hurt so badly, yet watched them walk away as if nothing happened, leaving you questioning your own reality? Tonight, I want to take you on a journey through the mind of a narcissist, the patterns they follow, the pain they leave behind, and the incredible power you hold to reclaim your life. Stay with me, because by the end you'll see clearly and you'll rise stronger than ever. A narcissist rewrites reality because their entire identity depends on maintaining a version of themselves that is flawless, admired, and above reproach. When they hurt you, whether through words, manipulation, neglect, or betrayal, they are not simply reacting to the moment. They are protecting the fragile architecture of their ego. To admit guilt would be to accept imperfection, and to accept imperfection would be to threaten the grand image they've spent their whole lives constructing. So instead of taking responsibility, they alter the story. They twist memories. They deny timelines. They minimize the impact. They reinterpret the event in a way that preserves their sense of superiority, even at the cost of your emotional stability. This rewriting of reality doesn't always happen with loud denial. Sometimes it's subtle. A shift in tone, a dismissive laugh, a strategic forgetfulness. They act confused when you bring up the hurt. They tell you it didn't unfold as you recall. They insist you're misinterpreting the situation. Their goal isn't to convince you of the truth, because deep down, they often know exactly what they did. Their goal is to destabilize your confidence in your own perception. If they can make you doubt yourself, they don't have to face the shame of confronting their own behavior. This is why the aftermath of a narcissist's hurt often feels more painful than the hurt itself. You're not only wounded, you're told the wound doesn't exist. You're not only upset, you're blamed for feeling upset. It's like someone breaking a vase, handing you the pieces, and insisting you were the one who dropped it. Over time, you begin to question your memory, your emotional responses, even your instincts. That confusion is the space where narcissists feel most powerful. But none of this is because your pain is imaginary. None of this is because you misunderstood. The rewriting of reality is a psychological shield for them, not an emotional truth for you. It is their way of preserving control, maintaining superiority, and avoiding the vulnerability that comes with accountability. You were never meant to win the argument, because the argument was never about truth. It was about control. Understanding this is a turning point. It's the moment you see that their version of reality was never meant to be shared. It was meant to be imposed. And once you recognize that, you begin to reclaim your own truth, piece by piece, feeling by feeling, memory by memory. And once you realize that a narcissist rewrites reality to protect their ego, something else becomes clear. You were never imagining the pain they caused. That's the second truth, the one people often struggle to accept after being manipulated for so long. Because when someone repeatedly denies your reality, you start to wonder if maybe you really did misunderstand. Maybe you were too sensitive. Maybe the hurt didn't happen the way you remember it. But the truth is, your pain was real. Your confusion was real. Your reaction was human. The narcissist's denial isn't a misunderstanding. It's a strategy. Their goal is not clarity. It's control. They need you to question what you felt, because if you trust your own emotions, you become harder to manipulate. If you trust your own memory, you won't keep letting them back in. And so, when they hurt you and behave like nothing happened, they do it intentionally. It's their way of keeping the upper hand, of ensuring the story bends in their favor, not yours. But you must understand this. If something in your body tightened, if your heart sank, if your instincts whispered that something was wrong, you were right. Your nervous system is wiser than their excuses. Your intuition carries truths their denial can't erase. You didn't imagine the disrespect, the coldness, or the shift in their tone. You didn't imagine the way they use silence as punishment, or laughter as a weapon, or affection as bait. You didn't imagine any of it. You lived it, and the moment you stop doubting yourself is the moment their influence begins to lose its grip. Because the greatest power they ever held over you was the belief that your reality was negotiable. It never was. And reclaiming that truth is where your healing truly begins. And once you reclaim your truth, once you finally say, I wasn't imagining any of this, you begin to see something even more revealing. The narcissist's ability to move on instantly is not strength, indifference, or emotional maturity. It's emotional amnesia. Not the kind that comes from forgetfulness, but the kind that comes from self-protection, taken to an extreme. A narcissist doesn't sit with their actions the way you do. They don't reflect, replay, or wrestle with guilt. Accountability feels like a direct attack on their identity, so their mind learns to drop the moment the second it threatens their self-image. That's why they can hurt you deeply at night and wake up the next morning acting as if nothing happened. It's not that they forgot what they did. It's that they refuse to let it matter. You, on the other hand, replay the scene because you have empathy, because you care, because your heart was in the relationship with both feet planted firmly. They never entered with both feet. They enter with one foot inside and one foot always positioned at the exit, ready to step out the moment responsibility is required. Their emotional amnesia is a shield. It protects them from the discomfort of remorse, from the vulnerability of apology, from the humility of saying, "I hurt you, and I'm sorry." To them, acknowledging your pain feels like surrender, so they erase it. They override it. They pretend it never existed. And this is why their calmness after chaos feels so cruel. It's not calm, it's avoidance. It's not peace, it's denial. While you're carrying the weight of what happened, they're already rewriting the script to keep themselves untouchable. But here's where the shift begins. Once you understand that their inability to face the truth is about their limitations, not your worth, their emotional distance stops feeling like your failure. It becomes their pattern, not your burden. And from that clarity, you start to rise. And once you see that their emotional amnesia is a shield, once you understand that their freedom from guilt is not a sign of strength, but a sign of avoidance, you start to notice a pattern so consistent, so predictable that it almost feels rehearsed. Because it is. This is the cycle of the narcissist. Idealize, devalue, discard, and then repeat. It always begins beautifully. They idealize you, placing you on a pedestal so high it feels like the sun shines just a little warmer on you. They study you, mirror you, praise you, and make you feel chosen in a way that seems almost magical. But this isn't love, it's preparation. They're gathering the pieces of your heart so they'll know exactly where to strike later. Then comes the shift, the devalue stage. Suddenly, the warmth cools, the compliments fade, the patience thins. You find yourself trying harder, giving more, walking on eggshells to recapture the version of them you first met. You think you've changed, but really, you're responding to their withdrawal. Their emotional amnesia kicks in again here. They forget the promises they made, the tenderness they showed, the effort they once gave. They forget not because it's gone, but because it's no longer useful. And then, when they've drained what they wanted, your energy, your admiration, your stability, they discard, sometimes with dramatic cruelty, sometimes with eerie calm. They disappear emotionally or physically, or both. They detach so quickly it feels like you were never real to them. Because in a way you weren't, not in the way you hoped. But here's the secret they don't want you to uncover. The cycle isn't proof that you weren't enough. It's proof that they can only love in cycles, not in constancy. They return not because they've changed, but because the cycle resets whenever they need something you once gave freely. And the moment you recognize the pattern, you stop mistaking it for love and start seeing it as the trap it truly is. And when you finally see the cycle for what it is, when the pattern becomes so clear that you can almost predict the next shift, you begin to confront one of the hardest truths of all. The pain they caused is not just a wound, it's a teacher. And as much as you wish you could have learned the lesson another way, this hurt becomes the mirror that reflects parts of you that you didn't even know needed healing. Because the question quietly rises beneath the chaos: why did I stay? Why did I tolerate this cycle? Why did their bare minimum feel like the maximum I deserved? And those questions are not accusations. They are invitations. Invitations to explore the places inside you where your boundaries were never taught, where your worth was never affirmed, where your voice was softened to keep the peace, long before the narcissist ever entered your life. The truth is, you didn't remain in the cycle because you were weak. You remained because your heart is wired for connection, for hope, for healing. You stayed because you believed in potential and transformation and second chances. You stayed because you loved deeply. And none of that is something to be ashamed of. But pain has a way of waking you up. It pushes you to confront what you've been avoiding. It forces you to rebuild pieces of yourself you didn't realize were neglected. The hurt teaches you where your boundaries need strengthening, where your self-love needs deepening, and where your trust needs discerning. In the beginning, the pain feels like destruction, like something precious has been taken from you. But slowly, quietly, it becomes instruction. It shows you what must change within you, not to blame yourself, but to protect yourself. And one day you realize the wound didn't break you, it shaped you. It carved out space for a stronger version of you, the version who finally knows what they will no longer accept, what they truly deserve, and what they'll never allow themselves to forget again. And once the pain finishes teaching you, once it shows you the parts of yourself that were quietly asking for protection, you step into the next truth, one that changes everything. Healing begins the moment you decide that your needs matter. This is where the journey turns inward, where self-love becomes less of an idea and more of a home you finally choose to return to. Because after surviving the emotional storms of a narcissist, you realize something profound. You've spent so much time trying to be enough for someone who was never capable of receiving you. You built bridges they refused to cross. You offered understanding they never reciprocated. You poured your whole heart into a connection they treated like a convenience. And now, the lesson emerging from all that pain is that the approval you fought for was never worth more than the peace you lost. Self-love isn't just affirmations or quiet moments of reflection. It's the courageous decision to treat yourself with the same tenderness you begged them to show you. It's recognizing that your feelings deserve space, your boundaries deserve respect, and your heart deserves safety. It's learning to give to yourself what you once hoped they would finally offer: consistency, compassion, care. And as you take those steps toward yourself, something shifts. The chaos that once controlled your emotional world begins to lose its power. Their silence no longer feels like a punishment. Their coldness no longer feels like a verdict. Their distance no longer feels like your fault, because you're no longer looking outward for validation. You're building it from within. You start to understand that self-love doesn't erase the past. It transforms it. It takes every lesson, every tear, every moment of confusion, and turns them into evidence of your strength. Loving yourself becomes the quiet revolution that breaks the cycle. The choice that says, I am enough, even without the person who made me feel otherwise. And in that return to yourself, you finally feel something you haven't felt in a long time: home. And as you come home to yourself, slowly, gently, deliberately, you begin to see another truth emerge, one that brings both relief and grief. You cannot transform a narcissist, but you can transform the parts of you that once accepted their behavior as love. This realization doesn't arrive suddenly. It arrives like dawn, soft but undeniable, illuminating everything you once struggled to understand. For so long, you believed that if you loved them harder, explained yourself better, stayed a little longer, or forgave a little more, they would finally meet you where you stood. You believed your loyalty could inspire growth. You believed your compassion could soften their edges. You believed your patience could pull empathy from a place where it simply does not live. But narcissists don't change because someone else loves them enough. They change only if they choose to, and most never do, because change requires accountability, vulnerability, humility. 3 things their ego was built to avoid. And so you realize that your healing cannot depend on their evolution. Your peace cannot hinge on their awakening. Your future cannot be tied to someone who refuses to meet their own past. Yet this truth isn't a defeat, it's liberation. Because the moment you stop trying to fix them, you free all that energy to heal yourself. You start to examine the parts of you that learn to tolerate inconsistency, the parts that confused intensity with intimacy, the parts that silenced their own needs to keep someone else comfortable. And then you begin transforming those pieces, not out of shame, but out of self-respect. You replace self-blame with self-understanding. You replace overgiving with balance. You replace waiting to be chosen with choosing yourself. And slowly, the version of you who once clung to someone who couldn't love you grows into someone who refuses anything less than a love that is real, steady, and reciprocal. This transformation isn't about changing them. It's about finally, courageously, changing what to accept. And as you transform the parts of yourself that once tolerated their cruelty, you begin to notice something else, something subtle. yet profoundly controlling their silence. The way a narcissist can hurt you and then act as though nothing happened is one thing, but their weaponized quiet is something else entirely. It's a method, a strategy, a way to exert power without ever lifting a hand. And understanding this is crucial because their silence is not emptiness, it is intent. When they stop speaking, stop acknowledging, stop responding, it isn't because they've forgotten or because they're busy. It's because they are reminding you in the quietest possible way that your emotions are negotiable and your presence is conditional. The gap they create is meant to unbalance you, to make you doubt your value, to make you chase what they deliberately withhold. It's an invisible leash, a tug on your heart that tests how much you will tolerate before you bend, beg, or break. But here's the moment where clarity breaks through. Their silence has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with their need to control the narrative, to maintain their comfort, and to avoid facing the discomfort of accountability. While you replay conversations in your mind, wondering what went wrong, they remain untouched, unbothered, and unconcerned because their world was never meant to accommodate your pain. Recognizing this changes everything. The quiet is no longer a reflection of your worth. It is no longer a measure of your power. Instead, it becomes the signal you've been waiting for, a signal to stop negotiating with someone who refuses to meet you where you stand. It becomes the signal to reclaim your voice, to speak your truth without apology, and to fill that silence with your own certainty, strength, and self-respect. Because once you see their silence for what it is, you stop fearing it and start letting it teach you how loud your own life can become. And once you understand that their silence is a weapon, you begin to realize another profound truth: your story is not over. The narcissist may have tried to write the ending for you, dictating your worth, your feelings, and even your memories, but the pen was never theirs to hold. Every manipulation, every dismissal, every act of denial was just a chapter, not the conclusion of your life. And when you see this, you start to reclaim your narrative, line by line, choice by choice. For so long, you may have believed that their actions defined you, that their approval, their attention, or even their rejection somehow measured your value. You replayed their words, their behaviors, their indifference, and you let them occupy more space in your mind than you did yourself. But your story is yours, not theirs. Their chapter does not get the final word. Your life is written by the courage you show when you stand in your own truth, by the boundaries you enforce, and by the love you give yourself when no one else will. This is the moment where you begin to see freedom. Every tear they caused, every moment they made you question yourself, every illusion they spun, it all becomes fuel. Fuel to write a life that is authentic, grounded, and unapologetically yours. You realize that the heartbreak, the confusion, and the betrayal were painful teachers, but not the authors of your destiny. You are the author. You are the hero of your story. And with this awareness, you begin to make choices that reflect your power. You no longer linger in spaces where you are devalued. You no longer explain yourself to those who refuse to understand. You no longer allow someone else's denial to shape your reality. You rise, not in spite of what happened, but because of it. Your story continues, and this time you write it with intention, with clarity, and with the unshakable knowledge that you alone hold the final draft. And as you step fully into the truth that your story is yours to write, you arrive at the final revelation, the power of walking away. Walking away is not just leaving a person behind. It is leaving behind the weight of their denial, the chaos of their manipulation, and the constant questioning of your own reality. It is the conscious choice to reclaim your peace, to step out of the cycle, and to honor yourself in a way that no narcissist ever could. For so long, you may have lingered, hoping for acknowledgement, searching for apology, or waiting for a change that would never come. But walking away is the moment when you stop waiting for someone else to meet you and start meeting yourself where you truly stand. It is the declaration that your energy, your heart, and your mind are no longer available for exploitation. It is a radical act of self-respect and liberation. The courage it takes to walk away is profound, because it means stepping into uncertainty without the familiar, even if toxic presence that once dominated your life. But paradoxically, it is in that uncertainty that freedom begins. With every step, the fog lifts. The memories of their denial, their manipulation, and their silence lose their grip. You begin to breathe in your own rhythm, to trust your own instincts, and to live in alignment with your own values, not the distortions of someone else's ego. Walking away does not erase the past. It honors it. It says, I have felt the pain, I have learned the lessons, and now I will rise above the harm. It is the ultimate reclaiming of your narrative, the final act of authorship. And in that act, you realize that no one can hurt you again unless you allow it. And no one can define your worth but you. Walking away is not an ending. It is the courageous beginning of a life lived fully, freely, and unapologetically on your own terms. So, my friends, remember this. A narcissist may hurt you, deny it, or act like nothing happened, but their story is not yours. Your pain is real, your growth is inevitable, and your worth is unshakable. Every moment of confusion, every tear, every heartbreak, they were not your defeat, but your awakening. Stand tall in your truth, honor your journey, and embrace the power to walk away. Your story is yours to write, your heart is yours to protect, and your life is yours to live fully, freely, and unapologetically. Stay with me, because the best is yet to come.